بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. Dear brothers, we start with the first hadith through the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He begins by saying عن عمر رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه رواه البخاري ومسلم. We'll translate the hadith and then we'll mention a few, before we begin explaining the hadith, we'll mention a few unique points about this particular hadith and some of the virtues of this hadith. It is narrated from Umar radiallahu anhu that he said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying, indeed, the actions are based on nothing but intentions. And for every person is nothing but what they intended. So whoever's migration is towards Allah and His Messenger, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then his migration is towards Allah and His Messenger. And whoever's migration is for the dunya, to attain it, or for a woman to marry her, then his hijrah is towards whatever his hijrah is towards. This is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. The first point to make on this hadith, of course, Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, he has begun his collection of 40 ahadith with this hadith. And this was something which was common amongst the scholars, that they began their collections with, in this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. From them is Imam al-Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. In his Sahih, the first hadith that he begins with, almost as you can say like a khutbatul kitab, almost like an introduction to his book, is this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And one of the reasons for this possibly is to remind themselves and to remind those reading that any action that we begin with, we must remind ourselves of our niyyah. We must remind ourselves that we are doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must remind ourselves that one of the first people on the day of judgment that will be thrown into the fire are those who they will be showing off, are those who, for example, the three that I mentioned, one of them being the reciter of the Quran, and he will be asked that, why did you do it? And then he would say that I did it for your sake, O Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond to him, كَذَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّكَ قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ لِيُقَالَ قَارِئ. But rather you recited Quran to be called a qari. وَقَدْ قِيلَ. And it was said. So these people, they get what they want in the dunya. So even these people who did some of the greatest actions, such as reciting the Quran, such as seeking knowledge, such as giving in charity, such as striving in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of these actions that they are doing, they are considered some of the great actions in Islam. And yet they will be one of the first people to be thrown into the fire. So it is worthy of us reminding ourselves of our niyyah, of our intention, that we are doing these things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever aids us to support that intention, we should try and do, such as hiding our actions, such as not wanting, not doing our actions in a way where we will be showing off, where we will be seeking fame, seeking popularity, and so on and so forth. So this is something which we must remind ourselves of. One of the unique things of this hadith, which many of the scholars have mentioned, and this is from a hadith side, is usually we find it is rare that a hadith has only one person narrating it. And even if there's only one Sahabi narrating it, there might be more people in the next generation. And then there might be more people in the next generation. And then there might be more people in the next generation. And we call a hadith which has only one person in at least one of the levels, we call it a hadith gharib. Gharib literally means strange. Why? Because there's only one person narrating it on one of the generations. But this hadith, subhanAllah, one of the unique things about it, as the scholars have mentioned, is that the only person to narrate it authentically from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Umar radiallahu anhu. And the only person to narrate it from Umar radiallahu anhu is Alqamah ibn Waqqas al-Laythi. So there's only one person narrating it from Umar radiallahu anhu. And then there's only one person also narrating it from Alqamah ibn Waqqas al-Laythi, who's Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Taymi. And then the same thing again for the next generation. There's only one person narrating it from Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Taymi, was Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. But then, subhanallah, from there it spread, a lot. It spread incredibly. From there they say that, some say that there's 200 people that narrated it on the next level. And then some say there's 700 people that narrated on the next level, and so on. So we know that after that it spread. After that, the A'immah, all of them, they tried to include it in their books, and they tried to narrate it. And of course, this hadith, it is one of the foundations of the deen. It is one of the things which many of the scholars, they have mentioned as being one of the foundations of the deen. And the scholars, they all agreed on the authenticity of this hadith. All of them. There's no difference of opinion amongst any of the scholars of hadith, any of the scholars of fiqh, any of the scholars at all on the authenticity of this hadith and the acceptability of this hadith. And this is why it is narrated by both Bukhari and Muslim. Now, there are many quotations on the virtues of this hadith and on the importance and the fact of how foundational this hadith is. One of those quotations is from Abdullah ibn Mahdi, rahmatullahi alayhi. He says, لو صنفت الأبواب لجعلت حديث عمر في العمل بالنية في كل باب. That if I was to author different chapters, then I would have made the hadith of Umar regarding the actions being based on intentions under every chapter. Why is this? Because number one, everyone needs to remind themselves of their niyyah at the beginning of everything. And number two, because al-a'malu bin niyat, the principle itself, there's a lot of fiqh involved in it also. And it enters into almost every bab in fiqh. Every action that we do, there is fiqh connected to this hadith. There's fiqh connected to this particular hadith. So this is a foundational hadith in our deen. And he also says that same person, Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, one of the great scholars of hadith, he says, من أراد أن يصنف كتابا فليبدأ بحديث الأعمال بالنيات. Whoever wishes to author a book, then let him begin with the hadith of al-a'malu bin niyat. So this shows that, subhanAllah, they considered this hadith as extremely foundational. In fact, many of them have different quotations also on it being half of the deen, or it being half of knowledge, or it being half of knowledge. Some saying it is 1/3, some saying it is 1/4, some saying it is 1/5, and so on and so forth. From those quotations, we find Al-Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullahi alayh. It is narrated from him that he says, هذا الحديث ثلث العلم ويدخل في 70 بابا من الفقه. That this hadith is 1/3 of knowledge. This hadith is 1/3 of knowledge. And it enters into 70 chapters of fiqh. Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi says the deen revolves around 3 ahadith. The deen revolves around 3 ahadith. One of them is al-a'malu bin-niyat, innama al-a'malu bin-niyat. The other one is the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha, man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad, a foundational hadith which is also coming in al-arba'in al-nawawiyah regarding innovations. Whoever invents into this matter of ours that which is not from it, then it will be rejected. And the third hadith being in al-halal, the hadith of Nu'man ibn Bashir, it is also coming in al-arba'in al-nawawiyah. In fact, all of these ahadith which we'll mention shortly, they will be coming in al-arba'in al-nawawiyah. All of them have been included by al-Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayh. The third hadith he mentions is the hadith of Nu'man ibn Bashir, إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما أمور مشتبهات. Indeed, the halal is clear, and the haram is clear, and between them is doubtful matters. In another narration, he also mentions that the deen revolves around 3 ahadith, and he mentions those 2 ahadith: al-a'malu bin-niyat, innama al-a'malu bin-niyat, man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad. And the third hadith is the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, again, which is coming in al-arba'in. إن أحدكم يجمع خلقه في بطن أمه 40 يوما. That indeed the creation of one of you is gathered in the womb of his mother for 40 days. And then it mentions the stages, and it mentions at the end of it the qada and qadar, the predestination, and the angel coming and writing the predestination, and so on and so forth. Some of them, such as Ishaq ibn Rahway, he mentions 4 ahadith, and he mentions these previous 4 which Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi mentioned: the hadith of innama al-a'malu bin-niyat, and the hadith of man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad, the hadith on innovations. And the third hadith, inna al-halal bayin wa inna al-harama bayin, indeed the halal is clear, indeed the haram is clear. And the fourth hadith, this hadith that we mentioned, the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, about al-qada wal-qadar, about the predestination. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam, again one of the scholars of hadith, he also mentions that all of the rulings to do with the akhirah have been found in that one hadith. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. Whoever invents into this matter of ours that which is not from it, then it will be rejected. And all of the ahkam, all of the rulings of this dunya can be found in one phrase: إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Like this also we find other muhaddithin mentioning 5 ahadith which the deen revolves around. But subhanallah, all of these quotations that we find that the hadith revolves around 2 ahadith, around 3 ahadith, around 4 ahadith, and so on, or إنما الأعمال بالنيات is 1/3 of knowledge, and so on and so forth. All of these ahadith, we find that one of the ones that they included in all cases, in all of these quotations, is the hadith of إنما الأعمال بالنيات. And of course the reason is quite obvious. One of the reasons for this is because all actions that we do, one of the conditions of it is intention, correct intention. And part of that is doing it sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other condition is doing it in accordance with the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, doing it in accordance with the deen, the wahi which has come down. And of course, if we do not do it in that manner, as is mentioned in the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha, then it will be rejected. We cannot just say, this makes me feel good. This seems like it's good because people consider it as good. No, this is not the way in which the deen is established. The deen is established as through those things which are established by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through that which is conveyed by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and anything other than that is rejected. So these are the conditions of all of our actions, and inshallah in the following sessions we'll enter into the discussions on the actual hadith and the meanings of the hadith and the implications of the hadith on different actions that we do. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grant us tawfiq and He grant us understanding of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He rectify our intentions and that He accept our actions on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.